Hollingsworth, and I'd like to thank you for coming out today. It's my honor to introduce a couple of guys who are both veterans of the U.S. military, and after coming back from service, recognize the need to help guys through tough times and to help find hope through their faith. We have with us this morning C.J. Stewart. He's the founder of the C.J. Stewart Foundation and Camp Downrange in Clinton, Mississippi. And Mr. Dan Fordyce, who's the founder of the Warrior Bonfire Program. Please join me in welcoming these two guys, and they're going to tell us a little bit about their programs and their ministries. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. My name is Dan Fordyce. I am from Vicksburg, and my brother and I founded the Warrior Bonfire Program a couple of years ago. I want to tell you a little bit about that. I'm going to introduce CJ, but first they tell me that I'm supposed to give a prayer for this morning. So first I got to tell a little story that I heard the other day about three fellas up on the West Coast, somewhere Oregon or Washington or something, went out on a little fishing trip, and a big storm blew up and blew the boat all apart, and they washed up on the shore of an island. One of the guys was making shelter and preparing for a long stay because they didn't know when they'd be rescued. The other guy's running around looking for food, and the third guy's just laid out on the beach enjoying himself. And after a while, every time they walked by him, they were looking at him, and they came by and they said, you know, what are you doing? It may be a long time before somebody finds us out here. Aren't you concerned at all? And he said, nope. And they said, well, you know, why? He said, because I am a very large tither at my church. I give $10,000 a week to my church. They said, you really believe God is going to come out here and save you just because you give $10,000 a week to your church? He said, no, not at all. They said, well, what is it? He said, I know my pastor, and he's not going to give up on that kind of income. He's going to find me. Please bow your heads and pray with me. Lord, thank you for this wonderful day that you have given us that is coming to life around us today as we gather here. And thank you for allowing us to gather in this way. What a great way to start a Thursday morning. Thank you for all the many, many blessings you have bestowed upon all of us. Everybody in this room is blessed beyond measure. Help us to realize that at all times, and help us to realize and care for those that are not as blessed as we are. Thank you for walking with us through our journey of life. Thank you for loving us when we don't deserve to be loved. And help us to always think about and care for those that are in harm's way, protecting us and protecting our way of life so that we can assemble like this in the freest nation in the world. Watch over them, let them know that you're with them, guide them, and bring them home safely as soon as possible. All this in Jesus' name we pray. Amen. My journey on all of this started back in 1981 when I joined the Mississippi National Guard while I was in college. And then I went on to serve on active duty. I served a total of 13 years in the Army during the Cold War. We like to say nothing happened on our watch. We kept everything under control. Thank goodness I've never had to shoot at anybody or get shot or get blown up. The next step of my journey happened a little over 15 years ago. I started interviewing World War II pilots for a program and met many of them at the time, 75 to 80-year-old men. And as I interviewed them, I became very aware of the problems that they were still suffering through. And even today at 90 years old, I can't tell you how many 90-year-olds tell me they cry themselves to sleep most nights. Oh, one thing I forgot to tell you. I can talk about this subject every day, but I get very, very emotional sometimes. So it's kind of stupid. I'm sorry, but you're just going to have to bear with me. And I'll tell you why in just a little bit. But so what I found out is that the problems associated with going into combat don't go away. Today, thank goodness, I think we are realizing more the effects and the effects of PTSD. And I hear a lot of times people ask me, why are these guys such wimps nowadays? They've all got all these problems. The guys in World War II and the old guys, they don't have those kind of problems. Yeah, they do. You got to get down pretty deep with them to talk about it, but they do. Read a book recently about the suicide rates after World War II. And I went back and I talked to guys that I've interviewed, and I said, how many of your buddies do you know that committed suicide after the war? Oh, a bunch of them. They just didn't talk about it at the time. Finally, we are realizing it. And finally, we're talking about it. You can't treat somebody if you don't diagnose them first. And today it's a problem that they don't want to be diagnosed as having some kind of mental issue. They don't want to have that stigma attached to them. But you can't treat somebody until you diagnose them with a problem. And so we are finally doing a much better job of doing that. 4 years ago, my brother and I, really what we wanted to do was take a bunch of guys deer hunting. We got a nice place to go deer hunting north of Vicksburg, and we wanted to just take some guys deer hunting. We were both in the military. We loved soldiers. We knew some of them that had gotten wounded and all wanted to go deer hunting, so we were trying to find them. We couldn't find them. We ended up starting a foundation we call the Warrior Bonfire Program. And our goal was to take some guys deer hunting. But the first time we took them out, it was amazing what we figured out. Guys that didn't know each other, within 5 minutes, it was like they were back in their unit and they were all best friends and they were buddies and they were working on healing each other at the time. And so it just really snowballed from there. And today we have worked with over 200 veterans. And in a minute, I'm going to introduce one of them that we met on that journey. But we have worked with over 200 veterans. We have recently acquired Camp Downrange, the old Camp Kickapoo, from the C.J. Stewart Foundation. And C.J. is working with us out there. He is on our board right now. But what I have figured out is that I keep hearing that these guys did this just because our country asked them to. And I kept having a problem with that statement because that gave me a bye, I felt like, that I didn't deserve. And I finally figured out what the truth was. These guys did this because our country told them to, because they work for our country. They did it because I asked them to. I asked them to, and you asked them to. Everybody in here. I did it very selfishly. I did it because I've got two beautiful little girls at the house. And I didn't want to worry about them getting blown up every time they drove out of the driveway. And you know, I've never spent 1 second of my life worried about that. In a lot of places in the world, dads worry about that every time the girl walks out of the house. I've never spent a second worried about that. And the reason I've never spent a second worried about that is because of people like CJ that have risked their life and have risked everything so that I don't have to worry about that. When you go this morning into your office, I want you to look around at everybody in there and I want you to think, how many of those people would you be willing to die for? How many of those people in your office would you be willing to give up everything? Your future, everything you got. That's what makes the military tick. That's what makes it go, because they're all that way. They're all willing to give up absolutely everything for their buddy and for us. And so I'm just trying to take responsibility for my ask, because I have, between the World War II guys and between the modern guys that I'm working with today, what they've done for me is I don't have the ability to have a bad day anymore, because I've got way too many pictures right there in front of me that my day can be a whole lot worse than it is. So I'm taking responsibility for my ask. And what I'm doing is I'm asking every American to take responsibility for yours, because we all ask this of them. And many of them have paid the ultimate price, but all of them have paid some price. And what the World War II guys have taught me is they're not going to quit paying that price for a long, long time. And so we've got a responsibility to take care of that. I feel a very strong responsibility that the generation that decides to go to war needs to pay for that war. And we're not doing that in any shape, form, or fashion. We borrowed every dime to pay for this thing, and we're going to give that to our kids. But we've got to take care of these folks. So a couple of years ago, we took a high school football star from Clinton and sent him out to the military to make a difference in the world. 43 surgeries later, I'd like to introduce y'all to one of the finest young men I've ever met, especially a 28-year-old. I've never met one more grounded that knew where his position in life and where he was heading was. Please help me welcome Mr. C.J. Stewart.
I don't need that one. I gotta correct. He said from Clinton because he's only known me for the last couple of years, but these are my people. Some of these people know me from when I was actually a kid. Although I did get a compliment that said I look younger in person than I did in that first picture. I said that's rare. But I will fix the obvious before we get started. I know some of y'all saw that picture of me just a second ago, and you're like, "Hey, wait a minute! You didn't have a full tattoo." That's exactly what you're thinking. Two things. You're going, one arm's covered in scars, the other's covered in tattoos. You're like, what's going on? And I actually started that journey before I got hurt. And since I'm not a quitter, unfortunately, my mother has had to endure the fact that I was finishing what I started. And the second question is, why don't you have tattoos on this arm? And I said, this one already tells a pretty cool story. I just wanted to make sure this one told one that was of a higher meaning and a one that I got to script. So go ahead and get the elephant in the room out of the way. But before I tell you really what I want to talk to y'all about, really two things today. One, and if you want to, write these down as a takeaway, I know you're going to remember exactly 8% of what I say. So I'm going to go ahead and tell you this is the bold part up front. Ownership. I want you to write that word down or just remember that word. And then the other is this, is transcendence. And so I am now in my, I guess it's technically like my fourth life of a career path is the counseling field. And specifically marriage and family, working with guys similar to me. I've gone through, the journey I've been through, something similar to that, and going, now, what are you going to do now? Or out at the camp, our heartbeat, our bullseye as a teenage guy, preparing them for what they're going to endure. And so those two kind of words. But before I, really talk to you, I got to tell you the context is everything. If I just started yelling at you right now to move, get out of the way, go, you're going to look at me like I'm crazy, and rightfully so. But if the building was on fire or if a tornado was coming, it makes a whole lot more sense. Kind of like, you go out there and play some golf and, everybody's an expert at, your backswing and all that jazz and all that. And then you actually go, yeah, I want to see you hit a ball first before I listen to you. Makes sense. So the context of my journey really is at 19 years old. I was at Mississippi College. I went there as a freshman. Left, graduated from MRA. Actually went there to play ball, and for the first time in my life, the summer after high school, I was like, "This is the wrong thing. I'm doing the wrong thing with my life." I hadn't gotten in trouble yet. So I wasn't, an external driving force, but really and truly, for inside, for the first time in my life as a man, I thought about where I was going. Down in life, end of the road, golden years, deathbed, even whatever you want to call it, where I'm going in life. And I said, when I get there and look back, am I going to be thankful for what I did? Am I going to go, man, I mattered. I did something with my life. I used what was given to me. Because the reality is nobody in this room was born and said, man, I just want to be mediocre. I don't want to accomplish anything. I don't want anybody to know that I never existed. I don't want to be a part of anything greater. I don't want to give of my ability. I just want to coast through. Nobody says that. That's why you don't have to teach a 5-year-old how to play war, how to play G.I. Joe. That's why little girls love watching Cinderella and being rescued by who? Man, because it's inside of us. It was given to us. We were created that way, to be a part of something bigger than ourselves. And that's why at a very early age, I've always had a love for the military. Because for me, there's no other picture that I've seen where you take guys from all walks of life, all seasons, stories, upbringings, families, whatever, put them in the same funnel. And at the end of the day, when the process is over, you get the exact same product. It doesn't exist like that. You know, you go law enforcement. Well, that's a little different because they live in the community they work in. They know the people. Be like if I was a police officer here in Central Mississippi, I would every once in a while know somebody. I'd probably pull over more people I knew. But you know that whole journey. But yet you take guys, literally some of my best friends, a couple guys whose names are on bracelets I wear, names tattooed on my arm, that are self-proclaimed thugs from inner city Philadelphia, Houston, Texas, who said joining the military was my way out to avoid going to jail or dying. And yet, when they got paired up with a hillbilly from Northwest Louisiana and Central Mississippi, we were the exact same, standing in uniform together. I can't find that anywhere else. I've always loved that. But I almost never took that step until my freshman year of college when I said, I'm literally doing the wrong thing with my life, and I need to tear down a wall of society that says you have to do something, you should do something, you need to do something. And so I enlisted. I enlisted in the Army. I know we got some prior service guys in here. I enlisted in the Army, and folks always go, hey, why do you like to, why'd you pick the Army? And I said, oh, it's really easy. I can't swim very well. I don't like to fly, and I can do basic math. So that ruled out the Navy, Air Force, Coast Guard, and Marine Corps. And for some of you, you're going, why are some of them laughing? And you'll get that joke. Is that door operational? Because I might need to sneak out of it for the Marine guys in the back. No. It was a family thing again. My great grandfather was my hero growing up. He lost his leg in the Philippines, came home and got 2 jobs. You're like, what? He came home, got a job working at the post office. And because of his Purple Heart, medically retired, and permanent disability, he was given bonus points on the civil service test. And he said, this country owes me nothing, and you're not going to give me anything. So he went and got another job, driving a school bus, when apparently you could drive a school bus with one leg. But side point. That was the kind of man I grew up around. That was my hero. And so at 19 years old, the first time I ever thought of myself as an actual man making decisions at college that were going to impact my kids, my wife, my career, my future, I said, what am I going to do? Where am I going to go? What am I going to do with this opportunity? I know why I'm here. I know how I got here. I've answered some of those big questions already. But what am I going to do tangibly? And so I enlisted in the United States Army. First time I ever, really left home for an extended period of time was basic training, the worst summer camp ever. And was fortunate enough to do, really well in it. Being raised in the South, the manners came pretty easy. Doing what you're told to do, when you're told to do it, wearing what you're told to wear. That was just like living at home. So that was pretty easy. I love athletics. One of the most competitive people you'll meet. My wife and I are not allowed to play games together. It doesn't end well. And so military really, came natural for a bigger reason. I love people. I thought really and truly my mission in life was to fight. I wanted to fight. That's why I joined. When I went to the recruiter's office, I said, I'm going to be the easiest person you ever have to sign up. I said, I want a job that matters, an impact. I want to serve. I'm not going for career training. I still don't know what to be when I grow up. I'm not going for education benefits. I just left Mississippi College. I want to go to war, and I want a job that makes an impact. And so he said, perfect. Sign me up. Healthcare specialist. I said, dude, what in the world is that? I was like, you didn't hear me. And he said, no, ding dong, verbatim. He said, no, ding dong. He said, this is the Army's fancy way of suckering people into being medics in the Army. I said, why? He said, no, nobody won't do that. I said, explain it. He said, read the first line. It says, you render aid to those injured on the battlefield. He said, how do you get there first? I said, you got to be there with them. He said, exactly. He said, you're going to do what they do. And when they get hurt, you're going to take care of them. But he said, the best part is, he said, they will not haze you as bad because they know when they get shot or blown up, they're going to want Doc to come run really fast for them. I said, I like where you're going. Sign me up. And that started the journey. I was fortunate enough to be assigned to the 101st Airborne Division, Fort Campbell, Kentucky. When I joined, they said, hey, where do you want to be stationed? Like the government really cares what I have to say. I said, Fort Campbell, Kentucky. And the way I drive, it's only 6 hours from here. And so I got to come home on extended road trips. Some of you got that one, I like that. But and then also home of the 101st. I am a history nerd. I really, meant that when I was talking about, my great grandfather and that generation. And so Fort Campbell had a special place for me. But then also when I got there in January of 2010, and we already had orders to southern Afghanistan for that summer. And so again, for me, when I joined, here's what I want to do. Here's why. And I really got everything, up to my eyeballs and more uh, from this time. And so we headed to southern Afghanistan in the summer. Again, context being important. Switching out of Iraq into Afghanistan, big surge. President Obama, it was the original big push into Afghanistan and completely out of Iraq. And so the summer of 2010 was the bloodiest summer to date. I'm gonna say that again. The summer of 2010 to date, we've been at war for 15 years, was the worst 5 months of combat. And 2010 itself was the bloodiest year in Afghanistan. My unit, 2nd Brigade, Strike Brigade, 101st, left Fort Campbell with 3,500 guys. We would be awarded only the 5th presidential unit citation of our unit's history. We got one in Normandy, one at Bastogne, and 2 in Vietnam, and only the 4th to come out of Afghanistan. We're the first non-special operations unit to get the presidential unit citation. On a micro scale, 105 guys left Fort Campbell, Kentucky with me, similar to this room. 48 were wounded and 10 were killed. Again, I'm not a math major. It's every other person in this room. So if we were to walk out and say, all right, boys, we're going to work, there's a 50-50 shot. You're coming back a little different or not coming back at all. And that was the world we lived in for a year. It wasn't go play Xbox, Facebook. They said, hey, get used to writing snail mail. Again, me not being a smart guy, I was like, hey, isn't this 2010? Why are we writing letters? They said, well, here's your assignment. And our 105 guys, basically the only paved road in Madison County, if you want to call it that, in the Zari district of Afghanistan, made a T with the main road that runs through Afghanistan, Highway 1. And our job was to own that 1.5-mile, 2-mile stretch. And by owning that, they meant you're going to split in half, go live in 2 compounds, Afghan compounds, no electricity, no running water, and you're going to own that area. Neighborhoods, meet people. We took over from coalition troops, not Americans. We were the first American brigade of 3,500 guys to be in southern Afghanistan for a full deployment. And so every day, morning, evening, go out on patrol, meet people, let them know we were really here to help. And engineers came behind us. We built town hall, markets, all that kind of stuff. But as an infantry unit, our job was, I compare it to fishing. Our job was catch the big fish that didn't need to be there at first, find out who the big fish were that, we needed to throw back and keep in the pond, but then also remove some. And also in fishing, every once in a while when you pull the worm back, it's smaller than it was when it left the boat. And that was us too. We were the bait, we were the hooks. We did that task. And the 2 outposts every day. Hear that again, every day. The 2 outposts. One of the patrols would either get ambushed or the outpost would get attacked every day. And it just became a way of life. Shots fired, go to your battle position kind of style, out on patrol. All right, either explosion or shots fired, it's just every day. But I absolutely loved it. Not because I'm a weird adrenaline junkie, but because the mundane junk of life did not matter. I never once thought, dang, I hope somebody paid my cell phone bill. You can keep it. You can have my car. We're alive. I'm with the guys that matter. And at the end of the day, we were alive. And I said, this is what I'm supposed to be doing for the rest of my life. Fighting this way. Fighting evil with good. Giving people bandages in more ways than one. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. And just 40 days into that deployment, I became the 11th casualty when our outpost got attacked. So of the 105, I was the 11th to get pegged. And enemy fired rocket, hit a wall a couple feet from me, sent pieces of the wall through my arm and leg. Doctors had to resuscitate me on the operating table during the first surgery from blood loss, and then started a whole new journey. 18 months, Walter Reed Army Medical Center in Washington, D.C. I've had 41 surgeries to date on my arm and leg, and really and truly, the physical side, whatever. That's an easy task. We're men. Check the box. Here's what you got to do, so forth. Was now what? Again, I was 21 at the time. At 21, you know everything in life. Not quite as much as you did when you were 14, but you still know everything in life. And so for me, it was now what? God, what do you want to do with this? Very early on. Okay. Very early on. One word that never came out of my mouth, going back to the ownership idea, and we'll break that down in a minute. One word that never came out of my mouth was why. Who cares? What's that going to solve? If you know all the whys, does it change anything? No. Still happen. What are you going to do now? Because you see, first 2 weeks, I was probably still in a daze. Really and truly, doctors gave me the MACE test for 3 weeks, military acute concussion exam, because they thought I had a brain injury. Because they said, you're entirely too happy with what's just happened to you to not have a brain injury. And I laughed and I said, I'm wondering why you're not happy. I said, happiness doesn't come from your right arm, bro. You can cut this one off and I'm still going to be the same guy. But for me, on July 2nd, just 2.5 weeks after I got hurt, one of my good buddies who was sent to take my place doing my job with my unit, who was married and had a 1-year-old son, stepped on a pressure plate IED and was killed. 21, single at the time. 22, married with a 1-year-old. The scales don't line up. They don't add up. I don't know that I'll ever say that they add up properly. So for me, asking why and trying to figure it all out wasn't going to fix anything. Wasn't going to solve anything. Wasn't going to change anything. I said, here's where we're at. What are you going to do with it? And that came very early on. In December of 2010, just 6 months after getting hurt, I told my then occupational therapist, now wife, on our first date about this idea of starting a camp. I said, hey, I feel like God wants me to start a place really and truly where we can challenge teenage guys and prepare them for what's next in life. Because you see, the two most influential and impactful things for me have been men pouring into my life throughout. As a kid, grandpas, as I got older, my dad, later in life, coaches, and then ultimately leaders in the military. And then the second one has been those events and those structures. Athletics early, but then the military ultimately, where I saw principles. Again, we talk about a book, principles or theory played out in real life. I saw the difference that it made when somebody walked what they taught. And I said, I want to create a place. I said, I feel like this is where we need to go and what we need to do, where we can really and truly not teach, especially down here. Every 9-year-old knows David and Goliath. All right. They can tell it to you probably better than you can. But they got no idea what it looks like to knock down a giant in 2017 at school, in the locker room, or in the car with their girlfriend. They got no idea what a giant looks like. I said, but we can use a tangible way to physically use experiences and circumstances to then teach principle and truth. Because reality is truth's truth. That's the beautiful part. Doesn't care what you think about it. You like it. You get offended by it. Whatever. It's your problem. It's facts. And at the end of the day, my biggest passion and my biggest calling and what I love is teaching people, men specifically. And what I found is young guys and us in the military, we run parallel because I think us in the military, we're still immature, still think we're a kid, can do all that kind of stuff. So we kind of work in that teenage mindset, teaching that, look, you have to own the circumstances that you can control in your life and let go of the rest. You got to focus on what you can change and what you can control and let the rest be. You got to look out the windshield in life and not the rearview mirror. 28 years old. I've lived almost 25% of my life post-injury. And we started the CJ Stewart Foundation in camp downrange. You know, that's kind of our mission and our passion. And we run the Manhood Academy. This summer will be our third full summer. We actually opened registration yesterday. And so if you got a middle school or high school guy wants to come out, we call it camp. Some folks call it hazing. You know, it's a boot camp. It is very physically challenging. It'll be the most fun they ever have doing some things they never want to do again. We're good with that too. But be our third summer. But what we found in, you know, this is our bullseye and this is what we think we're supposed to be doing, you know, working with teenage guys, preparing them for the battles and journeys ahead in life. What we've found is that men, grown men, already men past teenage years, are benefit and are impacted in the same way as the teenage guys that come out when we have the same conversations with them. And I go, that's weird. Because the reality is right now in our society, we don't have a lot of men. Just because you can shave, just because you're married, just because you have kids, just because you own a business, it doesn't mean you're a man. It just means you're a large, aged, and seasoned male. Big difference. Big difference. And the one thing that we focus on out there, and the one marker and the one difference between, I'll use these words, a coward and a warrior, is ownership. Ownership. Ownership of who you are, ownership of what you think, what you say, what you do, in the world around you. See, go back to this example in the garden. God didn't come looking for Eve, He came looking for Adam. And what did Adam do? Nothing. And guess what? That's why God came looking for him, because he did nothing. In a real world example, I got a good friend whose wife gave him divorce papers a couple years ago. He said, that's cool. Threw it in the trash. She said, we ain't getting divorced. She said, well, I don't want to be married to you. He said, too late. Now, was it his fault? No. It wasn't his fault. Was he going to take responsibility for it? Yes. Was he going to fight for it? Yes. Did he? Yes. Was it painful? Yes. Was it at times terrible? Yes. Did it take multiple years? Yes. And today they're married. Are they perfect? No. None of us are. Are there more strain and hiccup? Probably. But he said, you're my responsibility. I'm going to own that. Out at the camp, it's real easy to get caught up in the circumstances. Same way in life, hospital, work, family. I know, real easy to get caught up in the circumstances. Counseling field, we talk about anxiety and depression a lot. You've heard the PTSD, suicide, you know, all that kind of stuff. That's buzzwords in our society. But all that, when you drill it down, comes into is focusing on things that you can't control. Depression, you're focusing on things in the past you can't control. What if? Woulda, coulda, shoulda. Anxiety, oh goodness, what's about to happen? What's going to come? Where are we going with this? What's she going to do? What's he going to do? How's he going to respond? You can't control any of that. When you focus on what you and you alone can control, your attitude, your character, your faith, your toughness, your perspective, your confidence. It doesn't matter what the circumstances are. It doesn't matter how they respond. You live in your sweet spot in your world, controlling what you can control. You can handle anything. That's why I can honestly smile. And it's not a mask. It's a bridge to my soul. It's not a mask. You can cut this arm off right now. I don't care. You get a spare. You're good. Somebody's going to get sick. Guess what? We're all going to die. Unless the Lord comes back before then. None of us are going to make it out of here alive. So when somebody actually does die, why are you surprised? God, what do you want to do with this? How do you want to use this? Ownership. You have to own your world. 14-year-olds and you, have one thing in common. Life's hard. You know that. Life's a battle. You don't have to get blown up in Afghanistan to know what difficulty looks like. Teenagers, they control very little of their life. Just like you control very little of your life. Stop paying your taxes. See who controls your life. All right? Focus on what you can control. Ownership. Own you. Second thing, transcendence. Why we still have World War II reunions is this. Guys, a long time ago, from all walks of life, experienced something together that changed their life. And they love that. Downrange is about experience. I'm not here to educate you, tell you 3 things to change your life, 3 things to make you tough when you get hurt, whatever. Share an experience with you. Tell a story. Experiences are what make you who you are, not an education. Proof of that is if you took out a blank piece of paper right now and wrote down all 50 states and capitals, I got $100 that says nobody in here can write all 50 and 50. It'd be really hard. I don't know what the capital of New Hampshire is. But if your favorite song from your senior year of high school came on, you could sing every word to it, even if it was the Bee Gees. You know why? Because that's an experience. That's what stays with you. You can have 2 PhDs and it will not impact you like your dad died when you're 13 years old. That's what changes you. Our problem in our society right now is not the experience of combat, and it's not the guys going in it. It's when they come home and they go, now what? You go from a world where it's crazy, you will die for somebody, and somebody will die for you, to a world that's all about you. That makes sense. They don't know how to thrive in it. The ones that do thrive, they find their next mission. Life's not about you, and ultimately, it's not about this life. So if you find a bigger picture and purpose, that's when you find meaning. So my challenge for you as you leave here, I want you to think about what you're doing with your time. Is it a bigger picture? Is it about a group? Because you see, warriors don't have to answer that question. They know it. There's a bigger meaning to what we're doing than just us. More people benefit from it. Can that be said about your life? Is your purpose here bigger than yourself? Is it bigger than this life? And ultimately, do others take value and meaning from it? Pray with me. Father God, thank you for the men in this room. Thank you for just the opportunities we have, the stories you've given us, the experiences we've had to share. Thankful for just the chance that you've given us to serve. You've picked us right now in this moment in history to live. Father, we're thankful for that truth, that you love us, and no matter what happens to us, the circumstances and the settings around us, that cannot change. Father, I ask that you just continue to encourage, inspire, and challenge each man in this room, that they would, one, take responsibility for what you've given them, and that they ultimately would use it in a way that is not about themselves, but is of a bigger picture and a bigger purpose, that they would find a way truly to serve in a transcendent way, using the gifts and talents that you've given them. Father, it's in your name we pray. Amen.
Tell them your website or how they can.
That's right. CampDownrange.org is the camp's website, and the Manhood Academy is our summer program, and then the Warrior Bonfire program is our partner is how we serve vets. Because again, going back to that experience, it's real easy for a vet to tell you can't really tell me how to help me because you don't know what I've been through. For me to smile at them and go, let me tell you a story.
You want to tell a story?
No, that was just how I tell them. I can tell you a story if you want, but I mean, I got a bunch of them, man.
We thank you very much for coming. Let's give a big round of applause.
Thank you.
For being here.
Thank you.